I had just stepped out of the courtroom when the flashbacks hit like a freight train. The moment the judge read out the ruling, my legs nearly gave out. My mother, Nina Keller, fitness guru, social media icon, public face of body worth saving, had finally been held accountable. But it didn't feel like victory. It felt like aftermath. I stood there in the courthouse parking lot, breathing in the sterile air of justice, remembering the one routine that defined my childhood more than anything else. Every morning before school, I had to step on the bathroom scale. Not once, but twice. My mother said the first reading might be inaccurate. She needed confirmation. If the number was higher than the day before, even by half a pound, I lost something. No phone, no TV, no breakfast, no hug, and sometimes no words at all. That was the currency of her love, measurable, conditional, always negotiable. You were only lovable if you were losing. I asked her once why she did this to me. She smiled calm as a knife and said, "Because you have potential, Jenna, and beauty is earned. Carly gets it. You could too." She always invoked Carly, my younger sister, the ideal daughter, the before and after success story, the one with ribs like piano keys and cheeks that never blushed. She was Mom's proof that the program worked. Me, I was the mistake that didn't sell. At 8 years old, I didn't have the words for abuse. At 15, I thought I was the problem. At 25, I stopped trying to be thin enough. But now, at 35, I had evidence. I had a courtroom, and I had a voice. I just never imagined it would come to this. My name is Jenna Keller. I'm 35 years old, an elementary art teacher, and for most of my life, I believed my body was a betrayal. I grew up in Clearwater, Florida, in a 3-bedroom home that doubled as a fitness studio. My mother, Nina Keller, was a household name in certain circles, wellness blogs, Facebook groups, YouTube fitness channels. She wasn't just a trainer, she was a brand. She had glowing skin-taut arms and a voice like a motivational speaker who drank green juice instead of water. She ran her home the way she ran her boot camps, strict routines, daily goals, no room for weakness. When I was 6, I thought that was normal. By 12, I had already appeared in 5 of her online transformation videos. I was the before in every shot. Carly, my younger sister by 3 years, was the after. Even as a child, Carly looked like she'd been sculpted by a perfectionist. Narrow frame, tiny waist, a metabolism that could outrun a cheetah. I loved her, envied her, resented her, and protected her all at once. Our dad, Michael Keller, was a nutritional biochemist. He used to design supplements and study food science, but he disappeared from our lives after a university research scandal when I was 10. I don't remember much about the details, just a lot of phone calls whispering in the kitchen, and then one day he was gone. Mom never spoke of him again. She called it removing toxicity. After that, it was just us girls, and Mom's obsession with numbers took full control. Our weight was logged on a whiteboard in the laundry room. Body measurements were charted monthly. Calories were calculated in real time. She even made an app for that. At school, kids would bring sandwiches. I brought celery sticks and protein gummies. I learned early that being hungry was not only expected, it was celebrated. Carly adapted faster. She thrived under the system. She became Mom's assistant, her model, her living proof. I became the disappointment, the background, the one who could do better. When Mom launched her program Body Worth Saving, she used our names, our faces, our routines, and our struggles as content. She filmed everything me failing to do. Push-ups, Carly running laps before breakfast, our weekly weigh-ins. People online applauded her parenting. They called her brave for fighting obesity in her own home. No one asked how it felt to be the child on the scale. By the time I turned 18, I had graduated high school with honors, won a state-level art competition, and been accepted into a college arts program. Mom barely looked up from her phone when I told her. She asked how much I weighed that morning. That was the measure of my worth. Not my grades, not my passion, not my future, just the number on a screen. That was when I began to realize if I wanted a different kind of life, I'd have to unlearn everything she taught me. The rituals in our house were non-negotiable. Wake up, use the bathroom, strip down to your underwear, and step on the scale. Not once, but twice. My mother insisted the first reading might be off due to floor slant or balance, and only when both numbers matched would she mark it down. The numbers were never private. They were written in red marker on a whiteboard in the hallway where anyone could see. Beneath our weights were reward tiers. Drop a pound, you got a star. Drop two, you got a smoothie or 10 minutes of screen time. Gain anything, and things disappeared. No friends over, no snacks, no compliments, no smiles. Sometimes no hugs. I learned to associate affection with approval and approval with shrinking. Carly played the game better than I did. She was quick to adapt, naturally thin and eager to please. She started hiding food in her closet at age 9, not to eat, but to avoid temptation. She'd lick the frosting off cookies and flush the rest. I once found a diary page where she calculated how many jumping jacks it would take to burn off a grape. My approach was different. I couldn't stop thinking about food. I'd sneak into the pantry at night and eat saltines or leftover oatmeal and then flush the wrappers down the toilet so Mom wouldn't find them. She did, every time. And every time the punishments got more creative. One week, I wasn't allowed to sit at the dinner table. I had to stand and observe proper eating behavior. Another time, I had to write an essay about willpower and read it aloud on camera for her Parenting Through Discipline series. The internet loved it. Hundreds of comments praised her dedication, her innovation, her strength as a mother. I read them sometimes looking for even one that saw what was really happening. None did. Mom told me constantly that beauty was sacrifice, that love required effort, that Carly understood this and I could too if I would only try harder. But try as I did, joining every school club, acing every exam, cleaning the house until it sparkled, it never earned me what I really wanted. Her approval, her warmth, her belief that I was enough. Once I made a sculpture of our family out of clay. It took me 3 weeks and stood nearly 2 feet tall. Carly was thin and graceful. Dad was tall and calm. I made myself holding a paintbrush and Mom stood in the center, arms raised like a leader. I gave it to her for her birthday. She barely glanced at it and said it needed better symmetry. Then she asked if I had weighed in yet that morning. That night, I broke the sculpture in half and buried it in the backyard. Over time, I began to gaslight myself. Maybe I really was lazy. Maybe I did need the structure. Maybe Mom was saving us from ourselves. It wasn't until Carly collapsed in the middle of a live stream at 15 years old that I finally began to ask the question I had buried for so long. What if the problem wasn't us? By the time I hit middle school, I had figured out that starving myself wasn't going to win me my mother's affection, so I turned to achievement. If I couldn't be her idea of beautiful, I could at least be excellent. I poured myself into academics, winning spelling bees, art contests, and science fairs. I joined every extracurricular I could handle, not because I loved them, but because I thought if I could just stack up enough gold stars on paper, she'd finally see me. But it didn't matter. She never came to any of my art exhibitions, not even the one where I won first place in a district-wide competition. I remember standing there holding the ribbon, watching other parents clap and take photos of their kids, while my mother texted her trainer about a brand partnership for sugar-free protein bars. When I got home, she was doing a Q&A on Instagram Live about childhood metabolism and why kids today were too coddled to be lean. I left the ribbon on the kitchen counter. The next day, it was gone. When I asked about it, she said she had tossed it because we don't reward mediocrity just because other people do. That was her way of saying congratulations. Carly, meanwhile, had started filming daily workout reels at age 12. She was Mom's success story, the shining example of what discipline could achieve. She wasn't allowed to speak unsupervised during lives, but she knew how to smile flex and showed just enough collarbone to trigger admiration without concern. I tried to support her in my own way, helping edit videos, sketching thumbnails, even designing graphics for the brand. None of it mattered. I was just the chubby sister in the background. At school, I was praised by teachers and resented by classmates. I didn't go to sleepovers because I didn't want anyone seeing my weighed lunch portions or my mom showing up to ask why the host's fridge had soda. I started staying at the library after school just to breathe in a space where my body wasn't a project. I journaled, I sketched, I wrote poems about being invisible. I even wrote a children's book about a little girl who had to wear a backpack filled with stones that disappeared each time someone told her she was enough. I left a copy of the manuscript in my mom's room, hoping she'd read it. A week later, she used one of the metaphors in her vlog and credited a fan submission. That was when I stopped trying to make her proud. I stopped asking for her time. I stopped volunteering to help. But I didn't stop watching. I saw how her followers grew, how she started selling courses, how she trademarked our childhood meals. She had built an empire from our lives, and I didn't even have the freedom to eat a granola bar without permission. I learned to live quietly, to minimize myself, to be helpful without being noticed. And for a while, that was enough, until Carly started to break in ways I couldn't ignore. It started subtly. Carly, always the golden child, began missing her cues during live streams. She'd stare blankly at the camera or smile too long after Mom stopped speaking. At first, Nina brushed it off as adolescent moodiness, telling followers that Carly was detoxing from processed emotion, whatever that meant. But I saw more. Carly's hands trembled when she lifted weights. She started sleeping in the utility room, claiming the bedroom was too warm. She stopped speaking much unless prompted and became obsessed with brushing her teeth multiple times a day to avoid the temptation of chewing anything. Then, one afternoon, I walked into the garage studio where Mom filmed most of her content and found Carly slumped over a resistance band bench, face pale, lips dry. I thought she was napping until I noticed her arm hanging off the side and a bottle of injectable ampules lying on the floor next to her. The label wasn't in English. It was a black and white print with Cyrillic text, and the cap had been snapped off carelessly. I shouted her name, dropped my sketchbook, and rushed to her side. Her pulse was weak, but present. I called 911 immediately. When Mom came running in and saw what was happening, she grabbed the bottle and shoved it into her pocket before the paramedics arrived. I watched her transform in front of me. She went from panicked mother to poised professional in seconds. She's hypoglycemic, she told the medics. We've been on a carb cycling plan, probably just dipped too low. I tried to speak to explain about the bottle, but she squeezed my arm hard and gave me a warning look. I stayed silent. At the hospital, Carly was stabilized, but they kept her overnight for observation. I waited until Mom left to take a phone call before I asked the nurse to check her talk screen. She agreed, reluctantly citing protocol. That was when the cracks began to show. The preliminary results came back with foreign substances, not just energy boosters or caffeine derivatives, but compounds banned by the FDA for adolescent use. Still nothing moved. Mom explained them away as imported herbal injections, part of a new European method she was piloting. The doctor, unsure and frankly intimidated, signed off with caution. I knew I couldn't fight her alone, but I also knew something had changed in Carly. When she woke up and looked at me, there was no sparkle in her eyes. She looked older than 16, drained and distant. I asked her what she'd taken, and she whispered so softly I had to lean close to hear. Mom said it would flatten the rest of my hips. Her voice cracked. I didn't want to, but I had to be ready for the sponsorship launch. I didn't even know what she meant until I checked Mom's site later that night. A brand deal was going live in 2 weeks featuring Carly as the face of the Youth Shred series. The pressure wasn't just internal anymore. It was monetized. That night I started gathering everything I could. Photos, logs, screenshots, videos, anything that hinted at what had been going on behind the glossy filters and curated captions. I reached out to our dad. I hadn't spoken to him in years, not since he vanished under the weight of his own scandal. But I found his number, called him, and when he picked up, I said the one thing I knew would get his attention. Carly's not okay, and Mom is going to kill her one injection at a time. He arrived 48 hours later, unshaven, wearing the same khaki jacket he used to wear on his lab walks and holding a folder thick with documents. He wasn't the man I remembered from childhood. He looked tired, hesitant, guilty, but his voice was steady, and his first question wasn't about Mom. It was about Carly. He had already called in a favor with an old colleague who now worked as a toxicology consultant. Together, they reviewed Carly's hospital blood work and cross-referenced the unknown compound found in her system. It matched a known but restricted synthetic thyroid stimulator developed overseas, originally tested in livestock for rapid weight control. It was never meant for human use. I sat on the edge of the kitchen counter as he explained this to me in hushed tones while Mom was at the gym filming a core shred tutorial. He said we had enough for a formal complaint if we could verify the origin of the substance. That night, we logged into one of Mom's backup business emails. She had once used it to send herself drafts, and the password, our old street address, hadn't changed. That's where we found the shipment invoices. Packages arriving monthly from a wellness distributor based in Serbia. Each label coded with abbreviations, each product tagged under supplemental hormonal detox. She'd been receiving them for over a year. Dad took screenshots of everything, organized the files, and made an appointment with a family law attorney the next morning. It was surreal watching him work so methodically, like he was performing a long overdue autopsy on the family he'd abandoned. The attorney listened carefully, asked few questions, and agreed to petition for emergency medical guardianship of Carly. It would take time, but if we could prove that Nina posed a direct threat to Carly's health, a court could limit her access. When we got home, Mom was waiting. She knew. She didn't scream. She didn't flinch. She poured herself a protein shake, leaned against the fridge, and looked at us both like we were misbehaving clients. "I built this life for you," she said to me. "Everything you have came from me. Your name, your body, your brand." I told her I didn't want her brand. She smiled and said, "It's too late." The next day, she filed a restraining order against Dad, claimed he was an unstable ex-husband using outdated credentials to manipulate our daughter's care, claimed I was brainwashed, a bitter child desperate for relevance. She went live that afternoon, told her followers we were staging a mental health intervention sabotage and that our family was under spiritual attack. Her audience believed every word, but I didn't care anymore. The truth was in the paperwork. The truth was in Carly's hollow cheeks and bruised veins. The truth didn't need approval ratings. It needed to be spoken out loud to the right people at the right time. And that time was coming, faster than Mom could silence it. I knew if we were going to stop her, we needed more than invoices and lab results. We needed moments' proof of intent, something undeniable that couldn't be dismissed as misunderstandings or overreactions. So I started recording. I wore my phone in my back pocket with the camera lens poking out just enough. I captured her during workouts, off-camera rants, planning meetings for her Youth Shred series product line. The persona she showed to the world, bright, nurturing, relentlessly optimistic, shattered when the camera wasn't rolling. Behind closed doors, she spoke of Carly like a liability. "If she plateaus again, we'll have to drop her," she told her assistant during one phone call I recorded while pretending to wipe windows nearby. No one buys from a brand that shows weakness. She wasn't just pushing Carly. She was monetizing her image, calculating ROI on my sister's bones. One afternoon, I followed her to the private gym studio where she stored inventory. I watched her pull vials from a padded case and mix them with fruit juice in pre-labeled thermos bottles. When I asked casually what they were, she snapped, "Mind your business, Jenna. You've never had the discipline to understand." That night, I uploaded the footage to a private drive and sent it to Dad and the attorney. He said it was a start, but we still needed validation that the substances were being administered without medical supervision. That's when I reached out to Amber. She was a former intern who had shadowed Mom the summer before. I found her on LinkedIn and sent a message detailing what we were facing. She agreed to meet. We sat in her car outside a smoothie bar and she told me everything. That Nina had routinely bypassed dosage instructions, mixed ingredients without gloves, instructed Carly to smile through the nausea during shoots, and once told her that side effects were proof it's working. Amber had kept a backup of her old work journal notes, timestamps, even screenshots of texts where Mom bragged about shaving pounds in days. We added that to the file. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling we were missing something critical. Something that would cut through the smoke and mirrors she used to protect herself. Then, by accident, I found it. While going through boxes in the attic, I came across one of Mom's old camcorders, the kind she used before switching to phones. Inside was a tape marked Home Draft Raw. It was a mockumentary-style video she'd filmed with Carly at around 13. In it, Mom coached her through fake testimonials about her weight loss journey, feeding her lines like, "I was always so sad before I found control, and my mom taught me how to be strong, not soft." Between takes, she scolded Carly for blinking too much, for slurring, for looking puffy. In one unedited clip, Carly whispered, "I don't like saying this," and Mom barked, "Then act better." I watched it 3 times, each time feeling more nauseous. This was it. The perfect summary of everything: the manipulation, the control, the image building, the pressure on a child to perform suffering for profit. We digitized it, time-stamped everything, filed it under protected evidence. Meanwhile, Mom started spiraling. She sensed she was losing control. Her videos became more erratic, her tone more defensive. She cried on live streams, accused online haters of trying to cancel her message, claimed she was being persecuted for wanting her daughters to be healthy. She reached out to family friends, former clients, old colleagues, anyone who would listen. Some believed her. Others started backing away quietly. The brand began to fracture. One of her affiliate sponsors pulled their ads. A gym owner canceled an upcoming tour date. She blamed me for all of it, sent me texts saying I was poisoning Carly's mind and turning into my father. But I didn't respond. Instead, I printed every message, saved every voicemail, documented every veiled threat. The walls were closing in. And finally, Carly started speaking up. In whispered, late-night conversations, she admitted things I had only guessed. That Mom forced her to sleep in the sauna when she gained weight. That she had been made to write apologies to brand sponsors when her BMI stalled. That she'd been told her body was the company's capital. She wanted out. She was scared. And she was ready to fight. The first sign that Nina was launching her counterattack came in the form of a news alert on my phone. A local lifestyle blog had published a glowing profile on her called The Mom Who Won't Quit, praising her dedication to youth health and resilience in the face of cyberbullying. The article quoted lines from her live streams, pulled stills of Carly smiling in videos, and mentioned a disgruntled family member attempting to sabotage her mission. That disgruntled family member was me. Within 24 hours, 2 more articles surfaced, both highlighting her journey as a single mother raising strong daughters. She had activated her media contacts, most of whom she met during partnerships, and framed herself as a victim of jealousy and slander. Then came the podcast interviews. One host opened with, "Today, we're talking with fitness pioneer Nina Keller, who's bravely speaking out against cancel culture and false accusations from within her own family." I watched stunned as she delivered half-truths and weaponized sympathy. She spoke about Carly's genetic fatigue, her emotional instability, and framed the injections as medically supervised treatments recommended by foreign wellness experts. She never named me but referred to an older daughter with weight struggles and a history of lashing out. My inbox filled with hate messages. Some people told me I was ruining my mother's legacy. Others accused me of making Carly sick through jealousy. On social media, Mom's followers reposted old family photos with captions like, "Don't let one bitter apple spoil the whole bunch." She even posted a video titled "When Family Hurts You," where she cried on camera, saying she just wanted to protect her daughters and didn't understand why one of them had turned so dark. Carly saw it. She started crying in the kitchen, asking me if she had done something wrong. I assured her she hadn't, but the damage was already leaking into her recovery. Mom had also begun pressuring mutual friends to testify that I had emotional outbursts and resented Carly's success. She contacted my old volleyball coach and hinted at behavior issues. I learned that she'd sent curated emails to a former therapist I had seen for 3 months during college trying to get a character report. The worst part was the legal maneuvering. Her lawyer filed motions to suppress all our digital evidence, claiming it had been obtained without consent. He also requested an injunction to prevent Carly from speaking publicly, citing reputational risk. They were trying to freeze her voice before she could use it. Our attorney warned us this was a classic escalation tactic. When power starts slipping, abusers try to control the narrative through volume. We needed a direct hit, something irrefutable. That's when Dad got a call from one of the sponsors who had quietly cut ties with Mom. They'd received a tip that Nina had been supplying sample supplements without FDA disclosure and wanted to pass the information along. We followed the thread and found an email thread she had accidentally forwarded to an affiliate inside, where attached documents listing altered expiration dates and relabeling instructions. Proof she had been rebranding unapproved products to fit her fitness program. The brand face of Body Worth Saving was about to be exposed as someone willing to harm not only her children, but her customers. The question was whether we could bring it all to court before she found a way to bury it. The courtroom was cold, sterile, the kind of place that silences emotion, no matter how loud the truth becomes. Carly sat beside me, her frame still fragile, but her gaze steady. Dad was on the other side of her, thumbing through papers like a man preparing for war. Across the aisle sat Nina, calm composed, wearing a sleek beige suit and her signature fitness brand pin on the lapel. She looked like she was preparing for a panel discussion, not a legal hearing that could dismantle her career and reputation. Her lawyer stood with a confident smirk, clearly believing their narrative was tighter, more believable, more polished. The judge entered a woman in her 60s with a reputation for zero tolerance toward manipulation or hearsay. The proceedings began with the basic framework medical guardianship of Carly and the request for an independent investigation into Nina's methods. Her lawyer opened strong, painting a picture of a mother devoted to wellness, concerned about her daughter's declining discipline and facing betrayal from a child who never fit the mold. He presented character statements from clients and neighbors, old teachers, even a former pastor, all of whom described Nina as passionate, driven, misunderstood. Then came their personal attack. A long file of my texts, college-era social media posts, private therapy notes Nina had somehow gotten her hands on. She painted me as unstable, bitter, a jealous daughter, unable to accept her mother's success or her sister's discipline. The judge listened unfazed, taking notes. When it was our turn, our attorney began with the physical evidence shipment invoices, lab results from the foreign compounds found in Carly's system, digital logs from the gym's inventory management showing unauthorized substance intake. We played the tape from the camcorder, the mockumentary-style footage of Nina coaching Carly through rehearsed testimonials. The courtroom fell silent. The judge leaned forward. Then we played the secret recording where Nina said, "If she plateaus again, we'll have to drop her." Finally, we submitted Amber's testimony via affidavit and attached work logs showing altered supplement labeling and dosage instructions. Nina's lawyer objected to nearly every submission, but the judge overruled most of them. She asked Carly if she wanted to speak. My sister stood slowly, her knees slightly trembling. Her voice was quiet but clear. She talked about the sleepless nights, the weight goals that kept shifting, the sauna punishments, the scripts, the needles, the fear of failing as a brand asset instead of as a daughter. Then she said the one sentence I'll never forget. She loved me more when I was sick. There was no rebuttal strong enough to erase that. Nina didn't flinch. She sat perfectly still, like she had rehearsed this outcome, but the cracks in her mask were beginning to show. The judge declared that emergency guardianship would be granted to Dad with medical oversight from a neutral physician team. She also referred the case for criminal investigation under potential charges of child endangerment, unlicensed medical practice, and product misrepresentation. Nina tried to speak, her voice trembling with a mix of fury and disbelief, but the judge silenced her with a raised hand. "You've made health into harm," she said plainly. Outside, reporters waited. Word had already leaked. We didn't stop to answer questions. We walked Carly straight to the car, surrounded by the kind of silence that feels like oxygen returning. Back home, Dad made tea. Carly curled up under a blanket, and I sat in the hallway staring at a framed photo of us as kids. The image looked harmless then. Now I saw it for what it was, a campaign photo for a life built on control. That night, I opened my inbox and found an email from one of Mom's former assistants. In it were spreadsheets, timelines, client testimonies about crash plans that caused fainting spells, screenshots of Nina deleting messages from customers who had experienced severe side effects. It was enough to trigger federal attention. The brand was collapsing one exposed lie at a time. And for the first time in my life, I didn't feel guilty for watching her fall. I felt relief. I felt clarity. And I knew this wasn't the end. It was the beginning of freedom. The days after the hearing were strangely quiet, like walking through a house that used to be haunted. There were no weigh-ins, no reward charts, no whispered fears about portion control or carb cycles. Carly slept late for the first time in years without guilt. She started eating meals in full slowly at first, nervously, but without hiding or bargaining. Dad hired a licensed eating disorder specialist to guide her recovery, and I watched as she learned how to ask questions about food without shame. The girl who once measured lettuce leaves was now drawing smiley faces in peanut butter with apple slices. I began to reclaim my space too. The studio I used to sketch in became mine again. I reopened the clay sculpture project I had buried years ago, not to recreate the past, but to rebuild it with honesty. I made a new piece, 3 figures this time. Carly, arms open, standing strong, no longer hollow. Me, mid-motion, brush in hand, untangled. Dad bent toward us, protective but not overbearing. There was no 4th figure for Mom. I wasn't ready to shape her into anything yet. The media storm raged outside, but we kept our world small. Nina's face showed up on tabloids and fitness exposés. Former clients came forward with their own stories, adults who had taken her cleanse pills and ended up hospitalized teenagers with anxiety after participating in her online boot camps. One influencer publicly apologized for ever endorsing her brand. Lawsuits stacked up. Sponsors severed ties. Her lawyer tried negotiating a settlement behind closed doors, offering to resign her rights to Carly in exchange for brand protection, but no one took the bait. Carly refused all contact. When a letter arrived from jail claiming to be a reflection piece from Nina, we shredded it without reading. There were still hard days. Recovery wasn't linear. Carly had moments where she pinched her own waist and asked if she was slipping. Sometimes she weighed herself in secret and cried. But she talked about it now. We talked about it. We unlearned the old language no more. Cheat days, no more earning meals, no more body checks in reflective surfaces. I returned to teaching part-time at first, then full. My students noticed my paintings changed. They were messier, freer, brighter. One kid told me the lines looked like breathing. I took that as the highest praise. Carly enrolled in an art therapy group. She started painting with her hands big abstract canvases full of color and shape. Her first piece she titled Relearning. It was chaotic and soft, just like her. We put it up in the kitchen. Dad rebuilt his career from freelance consulting and launched a platform to help educate parents about ethical wellness. He called it Real Health Starts with Listening. We knew we couldn't erase what Nina had done, but we could make sure it didn't continue. When the final sentencing came, we didn't attend. We stayed home, made pancakes, and watched cartoons. It felt radical to laugh that day, to let ourselves exist without a scale in sight. That night, Carly hugged me and said, "I don't think I was ever really alive until now." I told her I felt the same. And even though we still flinched at certain sounds, still paused when the word discipline came up, we kept moving forward, together. I used to believe that love had weight, that it could be measured in numbers and earned through suffering. That belief was stitched into me by the hands of someone who claimed to know what was best, someone who built an empire out of our insecurity and sold our pain dressed as progress. For years, I thought if I could just lose a few more pounds, just say yes more often, just shrink myself small enough to be invisible and useful, then I'd finally deserve peace. But peace was never something I had to earn. It was something I had to choose. Watching my mother fall was not satisfying. It was sobering. There was no celebration, no vindication, only the cold realization that control had eaten her alive long before the world saw the damage. She didn't just hurt us. She trapped herself inside a system where love was conditional, where daughters were currency, and where success meant silencing hunger, emotional, physical, existential. In the end, she lost everything. And we found ourselves. Carly still keeps a journal not for tracking calories or water intake, but for writing reminders to herself. Things like, "I am not a number and my body is not a billboard." She read me a page once where she wrote, "Jenna saved me, but I'm the one learning how to stay saved." I don't cry when she says things like that anymore. I just nod. I walk by mirrors now without checking. I eat birthday cake without bargaining. I create without asking for permission. And sometimes I catch myself in the middle of a moment watching Carly laugh, watching Dad cook, watching the house stay quiet past sunrise, and I feel a sense of something soft and unfamiliar settle in my chest. Maybe it's healing. Maybe it's freedom. Maybe it's what unconditional love actually feels like. Whatever it is, I'm not giving it up. Not for any scale, not for any brand, not even for the illusion of a perfect mother. I am enough. We are enough. And finally, that's the truth I believe in.